Now that the second episode of Bleach's 1000-Year Blood War arc has dropped, we are getting a better idea of the pacing of the series, as well as seeing where they are choosing to expand upon certain scenes, as well as deciding to cut specific moments from the manga. During my first anime versus manga comparison video covering episode 1, we had talked about how a lot of the comedic moments were cut from the first episode of the anime, which had adapted 5 chapters into this first episode. Now, the second episode of the anime adapts chapters 485 to 488. Now, this is roughly 4 chapters worth of material. In this video, I will be going over every change made between the anime and the manga, as well as discussing additions, changes, and cuts, while avoiding talking about any moments which are just straight one-to-one adaptations from the manga. So join me as we compare the second episode of Bleach's 1000-Year Blood War arc to the 4 chapters of the manga that it adapts. Episode 2 actually has some notable additions, but like last time, it has some cut content, and this time around a specific scene was cut from the anime which I'm not too pleased about. Additionally, there are some indications that the anime is rushing through some of the material within the manga. Now let's begin by comparing the start of the episode to the beginning of chapter 485. Before the anime begins, it shows us a moment from the beginning of chapter 485, after Luders has his arm severed and he is struggling to sit up. We see a bit more of the gruesomeness of this scene within the anime, as we see the severed arm beside Luders. Additionally, we see the title of the episode Foundation Stones on Luders' severed arm before we cut into the opening of the anime. After the opening, the episode begins with a one-to-one adaptation from the manga. Things begin to alter when Ryunosuke's phone begins to ring. In the manga, he apologizes for the ringtone because it is a recording of Shino humming. Shino doesn't seem to be too pleased about this, as she asks when he had recorded her. He then points out a very specific portion of the humming ringtone that he really likes in order to further embarrass Shino. Now, this is another comedic moment that is cut from the anime, and following the trend of episode 1, the anime is focusing on serious moments in order to keep the tone of the series feeling consistent. Within the manga, Ryunosuke answers the phone after Shino hits him, while in the anime he just picks up the phone after Ichigo returns from his battle with Iben. The phone call is handled a little differently within the manga, as the call starts with Ryunosuke stating that there will be a funeral for the lieutenant of the 1st Division who has just been killed. However, the anime cuts this entirely as it skips to Akon's debrief. The anime reveals Sasakibe's death impactfully towards the end of the call. Additionally, we get some anime exclusive scenes of Shino or Ryunosuke reacting to the news, with Shino stating that a man like Sasakibe has been killed as he was powerful enough to serve under the head captain for years. Now, I feel like a later cutscene that I will speak about has been repurposed into this line read by Shino here. We also get some anime exclusive shots of Ichigo and the gang reacting to the news as they look really saddened to hear about the death of Sasakibe, while Akon wraps up his briefing. Then in the manga, we see Ichigo sitting on his bed before he decides to patrol Karakura Town. However, in the anime, we get a close-up shot of Ichigo staring out of the window with some sad music, setting the tone for the tragic news of Sasakibe's passing. Additionally, we get an exclusive shot of Chad jogging, as well as Orihime staring out of a window and Uryu looking at his Quincy cross. Now, Ichigo thinking back to Uryu's comments from earlier while he is patrolling within Karakura Town is cut from the anime. Uryu speaks about how he feels optimistic that they had told an ordinary Shinigami like Ryunosuke so much information because they had known that he was with Ichigo. Now, this means that they had wanted Ichigo to know about what is going on and that the Soul Society will call on his help in the not too distant future. Uryu also says that there is not much that they can do now, especially after Ichigo had told Ryunosuke the details about his battle against Iben. Now, by cutting this scene from the anime, it seems like it robs some of the context behind Ichigo feeling a little lost here. Now, in the manga, we understand why he feels helpless because of this moment that he thinks back to. However, in the anime, he just seems upset after hearing the news about Sasakibe and he just heads out to patrol the area. Chapter 485 ends with the reveal that Yhwach has captured Haribel, and the anime adapts this exactly like how it was portrayed within the manga, and this takes us up to the 8-minute mark of episode 2. Chapter 486 begins with Ichigo questioning Nell about Hueco Mundo until Pesce also arrives. In the manga, after Ichigo correctly identifies Pesce, he says that he was listening to Nell talk about how Hueco Mundo was in danger until he was rudely interrupted by him. Pesce then loudly agrees with Ichigo as he affirms everything that he has just said by saying that they have got Hueco Mundo, to which Ichigo says that he already knows this. Now this comedic but pretty pointless scene is removed from the anime, and it is yet again a moment that doesn't really affect the plot or the flow of the story. On the other hand, the following scene that is cut from chapter 486 is actually one that does affect the plot and really left me feeling confused as to why they would remove it from the anime. Now this scene occurs during the cremation ceremony of Sasakibe. In the anime, we see the Gotei 13 gather to pay their respects for the late lieutenant of the 1st Division. Now despite the fact that this scene does feel sped up, it beautifully adapts a panel from the manga of Sasakibe kneeling before Yamamoto, but it doesn't provide the context for this scene, which can only be found within the manga, where we learn about the bond between the head captain and his lieutenant. We just see Yamamoto looking saddened as he says, "Light the flames," and it cuts to Yuzu lighting the gas hob in the kitchen. Now I just feel like this is such a strange and disrespectful transition. I had genuinely laughed out loud when I had seen this because it had caught me so off guard. The manga on the other hand had Byakuya deliver a brief monologue to Renji, and consequently to us, about the kind of man that Sasakibe was. Since he got such little screen time, and without this we would know very little about him, we learned that he was a Shinigami who should have been a captain. But according to the written records of the Soul Society, Sasakibe had attained Bankai before even Ukitake and Shunsui were born. However, not once did Sasakibe use his Bankai in all of the years that he had it. Now this is going as far back as the formation of the Gotei 13. Over time, some captains were reported to have insulted Sasakibe, referring to him as an assistant captain who doesn't take part in battle, saying that he is not fit to be a lieutenant. But despite this criticism, Sasakibe had never hated being the lieutenant of Yamamoto. He had even refused to be an interim captain after Gin, Tozen and Aizen had betrayed the Soul Society. We know that these positions were filled by Hisagi and Kira respectfully until the return of Kensei and Rose. This was because he was incredibly loyal to the head captain. He had sworn to be head captain Yamamoto's lieutenant for as long as he had lived. He was a man who had used his Bankai for the first time in battle and he had ended up dying. Byakuya states that the grief that Yamamoto must be feeling right now is beyond the imagination of subordinates who have yet to endure such pain. Now this funeral within the manga was made so impactful because of the exposition that was delivered by Byakuya. It is easily some of my favorite pieces of dialogue delivered by him, and it was such a shame to have this cut from the anime. It is by far the biggest cut from the anime so far, and I really hope that they include this scene in one of the upcoming episodes, and I hope that I am speaking too soon by saying that they had left it out for no reason. Now to help us forget about this omission, we get a pretty amazing anime exclusive scene where Pesce explains how the Quincy had taken over Hueco Mundo and Yhwach had defeated Haribel. We cut to a flashback of Hueco Mundo with the corpses of Arancars littering the ground, with the blue Quincy flames everywhere. Lightning strikes as we see Yhwach in the sky charging up his reishi. Now this is one of my highlights of this episode, because I had wanted to see the Quincy's invasion of Hueco Mundo for so long, and now we finally get to see it. We get a very brief glimpse of Haribel in a resurrection having been pinned to a wall, just about to receive the finishing attack. Her final words are to Nell, Pesce and Dondachaka as she tells them to escape. Now while they run away, we see Haribel transported by Yhwach's shadow into the Quincy fortress Sealburn. When Pesce explains that the Quincy have captured several Arankar already, in the manga we see Ichigo think to himself that Eben must have been one of the recruits. This scene is cut from the anime. We then get an anime exclusive scene here of Pesce pleading with Ichigo to help them save Hueco Mundo. This is followed by another anime exclusive scene of Ichigo saying that they cannot ignore their request for help, while in the manga it just cuts to Uryu saying that he cannot accompany them this time round. In the anime, we get an exclusive scene of Uryu saying that he cannot go with them because he is a Quincy, and he can't help Hollows or Arankars. Now this added scene helps to provide more context for Ichigo assuming that the reason for Uryu not helping is because Quincies exist to eliminate Hollows. Now in the manga, this was a bit vague, but thankfully the anime elaborates upon this. In the anime, Uryu tells Ichigo to be careful, as Ichigo tells him not to worry, but Uryu is then cut from finishing his next sentence, which appears to be another anime exclusive line, as he was about to say something about the enemy. Now during the manga, we see Ichigo tease Uryu as he tells him not to worry and that they will be fine without him. Now this is before Urahara arrives. Now the halfway mark of the episode takes us perfectly up to the end of chapter 486, where we see Hashward examining Eben's medallion. But this is another scene from the anime that is cut here, where Hashward explains how Eben was unable to capture Ichigo's Bankai. In the manga, Yhwach explains how special measures need to be used against Ichigo, as Hashward agrees that it is nice to at least have it verified that their medallions don't work in Ichigo. Now this is another strange omission from the anime, as we cut to the start of chapter 487, with Ichigo and the gang traveling through the Garganta making their way towards Hueco Mundo. Now I hope that this scene has just been rearranged and it will be included within the next episode. Now before Ichigo and company break into Hueco Mundo, we get an anime exclusive scene of the Quincy leading away Arrancars that they have held captive. After arriving and taking cover, we get an anime exclusive scene of Ichigo asking whether if Dondachaka is amongst the captives, but Pesce tells Ichigo that he doesn't sense a spiritual pressure. In the manga, we see Ichigo covering the faces of Nel and Pesce, which leads to a little comedic moment between Ichigo and Pesce, which is removed from the anime, as he is seen to only be covering Nel's face within the anime. We then have another anime exclusive scene of the corpses of the Arrancars being shown to us, whereas in the manga it is just spoken about. Within the anime, Kilge's introduction is switched up here a little bit. In the manga, we cut to it immediately, where in the anime we see his men rounding up the Arrancars before he is formally introduced. Within the anime, when Kilge demonstrates what will happen to the Arrancars who do not understand his orders, we see him violently impale one Arrancar after the other. Now in the manga, we just hear him speaking, but it isn't shown in such graphic detail as it is within the anime. After Kilge is confronted by Loli and Monoli, he comments on how he had thought that he had confiscated the Arrancar Zanpakuto within the manga, but his men try to answer, but this is cut from the anime. Moving on to the introduction of the three beasts, this is altered within the anime as the scene of them arguing is cut. The manga sees Mila Rose and Apache arguing with each other, meanwhile Sunsun ends up confronting Kilge. We then cut to Ichigo rushing to the battlefield as he sees an explosion erupt from Haribel's Fraction as they begin their counterattack against the Quincy. Now after Nel suddenly appears on Ichigo's head, a brief comedic scene is cut within the anime, where Nel tells Ichigo that she will always watch his back and stop him from getting hurt. Now the anime instead skips to the explanation of the three beasts. After Nel covers Ichigo's eyes and he begins shouting out, a scene is cut from the anime where Orihime warns Ichigo not to make so much noise because the enemy will notice them. The anime cuts another scene here of Sunsun questioning how long Apache and Mila Rose will plan on arguing while she eliminates some Quincy. Within the anime, this is restructured slightly as she instead attempts to blindside Kilge. Now the entire structure of this encounter is altered because of these changes, as a scene involving one of Kilge's men requesting to surrender is also cut. In this particular cutscene, we see the Quincy exclaim that the three beasts are too strong, as he requests that Kilge gives them an order to withdraw, but instead he ends up killing the frightened Quincy. Kilge makes an offer to Haribel's Fraction to surrender while he is avoiding Sunsun's attacks within the anime, but in the manga we see him standing still speaking to them. Following this, there is an anime exclusive scene of Mila Rose jumping in the air attempting to attack Kilge after his offer of surrender. Now during this moment, the anime ends up cutting a panel where we see Kilge praising the three beasts, as he describes them as spectacular strong ladies who are perfect pawns for Yhwach, and it is for this reason why he is not going to kill them. Instead, he urges for them to surrender. Moving on to the captain's meeting towards the end of the episode, Mayuri's speech is altered slightly here, so that it is revealed that the enemy of Quincy is timed for the end of the episode. So some of the information that he relays here is switched up, as he explains that the disappearance of a large number of hollows has caused an imbalance of souls, which would eventually spell the end of the human world as well as the Soul Society. Now this information is all anime exclusive, as we then cut away from the captain's meeting to Ichigo rushing over to the battlefield as he witnesses the three beasts being defeated and laying bloodied on the ground, as Mayuri goes back to the manga script and he syncs up the reveal that the enemy are Quincy to Ichigo finally confronting Kilge, which perfectly ends episode 2. Now, the two notable omissions during this episode were Byakuya's speech and Hashward not elaborating upon Iben's medallion being able to seal Ichigo's Bankai. Additionally, we had several comedic moments that were removed and some scenes that had to be reworked, but surprisingly we had some strange additional scenes which helped to set the mood of some of the moments. We had more shots involving Ichigo and the gang, as well as the incredible anime-only scene revealing the invasion of Hueco Mundo and the capture of Tia Haribel. We knew in advance that episode 1 would adapt 5 chapters and episode 2 would adapt 4 chapters, thanks to the preview screenings of the episodes that were held in Japan back in September. However, as for next week, we are not really sure about how they will pace the episodes. I hope that they will include the information that they cut about Sasakibe in the next episode, and how we will get to hear about Ichigo's Bankai being an exception to the norm. Now, this is all very key information that really has me concerned about some of the cuts that they are making. Now, while I express my concern, I'm still super pleased by the additional scenes here, and I can understand why they would remove some comedic moments that would disrupt the flow of the anime. These jokes probably work better in the medium of manga, but would serve to be very disruptive if adapted straight into the anime. So let me know all of your thoughts about the way that the anime adapts chapters 485 to 488 of the Thousand Year Blood War arc into the second episode. Definitely continue the discussion in the comments, and lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.